Hey folks, it's Saturday, and you know what that means. It's time for me to dive into another episode of a superhero animated television series. And today, I will be talking about the Batman the Animated Series episode, Perchance to Dream. Before I get into my thoughts on the episode, I will quickly sum up what happened in case it's been a while since you saw the episode, and for those of you who have not seen it. We begin with a car chase where Batman ends up in a warehouse with a bright light shown in his eye. Then he wakes up and things are different. Alfred does not know who Robin is, or where the Batcave is, or what it is for that matter. And the cherry on top of this weird ice cream sundae is that Bruce Wayne's parents are still alive. What? Bruce goes through a series of rude awakenings, pun intended, as he realizes the life that he has known for so long is apparently not his real life. But soon he realizes he is in fact inside a very vivid dream world. He confronts Batman, who is a separate entity in this dream world, and beneath the mask it is the Mad Hatter. We find out the Mad Hatter has created a perfect world for Batman, and once Bruce escapes from it, we find out the reason why. Mad Hatter was willing to give Batman a perfect life, just to keep him out of his own life. Like I mentioned in my review for the episode Eternal Youth, this episode marks the return appearance of the Mad Hatter, and that means his shtick has to be entirely different than it was the last time that we saw him. In his first appearance, not too long ago, he was just an ordinary dude obsessed with his coworker. He went too far in his attempts to date her, but he wasn't a full-on supercriminal like the Scarecrow or the Joker or anything like that. It does seem a little strange that the Hatter is going out of his way to keep Batman incapacitated. What exactly does the Hatter have planned that he does not want Batman interfering with? Is he gonna try and stalk his coworker some more? I think this episode would hold up a lot more if this series had just established the Mad Hatter a little better as a recurring villain. Outside of his introductory episode, I have no idea what his overall goal is. Is he trying to take over the world, or at the very least Gotham City? We have no idea because we don't know what makes this guy tick as a character. It's a shame because I don't think I had really realized just how poorly the Mad Hatter works as a recurring character in this show. He is a lot like Two-Face or Mr. Freeze, who work really well once, but multiple times not so much. And what makes this all the more heartbreaking is that this is a really good episode. The whole thing is just captivating for me. When you hear people talk about how amazing this series was and how ahead of its time it was, they have got to be talking about this episode and other episodes of this quality. Sure, there's some problems, like the aforementioned problem of why exactly the Mad Hatter would target Batman like he does. Don't get me wrong, the idea of a villain wanting to give Batman a happy ending just so that he or she can have their own happy ending is a really fantastic idea, but it just does not exactly work with the Mad Hatter as he was shown to us in this series. And then there's the way that Bruce remembers everything about his life, even inside the dream world. Now, I get that this is a 22-minute episode, so we don't have time for a really complex problem for Bruce to use his detective skills to solve. But it seems to me that because this is a 22-minute episode, Bruce knows that he is in a dream from the beginning, just to make his detection easier for him to do. I think this whole scheme by the Mad Hatter would seem more ironclad if Bruce wakes up from his dream and has no idea that the world that he is living in is not real. And then he slowly realizes things aren't quite right, like when his body is in super tip-top condition and should not be for a lazy, no-good Playboy CEO. And then he could discover that he can't read, and then he would realize that he's in a dream. It just seems too easy that he already knows that he's in a dream and just has to find the proof to confirm his suspicions. But again, we would not have time for all of that in a 22-minute episode, so I'm willing to let this slide. How Bruce realizes that he really is in a dream is not as okay though. I really have no idea if you can or cannot read in dreams. This seems like that thing that people say where if you die in a dream then you die in real life. Well, how would anyone actually know that? Same thing with reading in a dream. Just because I cannot remember ever reading anything in my dreams does not mean that it is impossible. And you know what? Maybe there is something behind this. Maybe the screenwriters of this episode actually looked into this and found scientific evidence that you cannot read anything in a dream, and for the reasons given in this episode. But even if that does come from the real world, it still feels like it was made up. And again, for the reason of making Batman's detective work easier for him. I am glad that we don't have the classic that this series always falls on, where Batman just feeds information into the Batcomputer and lets it do all of the detection. But these air quotes clues that Batman comes upon, they aren't exactly hard to decipher. I could solve this scenario given what Bruce is given, and I'm not even the world's greatest detective. But again, 22 minutes to tell a complete story, so I'm willing to let something like this slide. What are some things that I like about this episode? After all, I did say this is a really great episode. Well, I like that we don't even know who the villain of the piece is until near the end of the episode. If the episode showed Batman chasing down the Mad Hatter at the beginning of the episode, it'd be too easy for the audience. This way, if you haven't seen the episode before, you have to try and figure out just why Bruce is in this weird reality that he's in. And that's not something you see often in animation. Usually, it seems to me, animated shows will speak down to the lowest common denominator, instead of letting the audience be smart like they are capable of being. This episode also reminds me of some really fantastic episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation. Specifically the episode called Tapestry, where Picard gets to experience another life where he did not get an artificial heart, and the episode The Inner Light, where for an inexplicable reason Picard wakes up in another man's body and spends some 30 years in this other life until he returns to his life as a starship captain. I'm not saying this episode was ripping off those other episodes, especially since Tapestry aired after this episode of Batman. And I'm not even sure if the guys behind this show were even fans of TNG. But if they weren't, then I'd stake $1 on the fact that they were probably fans of some older sci-fi story where a man wakes up in another life that isn't his own. I am certain there is some other story that predates all of these Star Trek and Batman episodes like this. And why not? This is a great kind of story to explore, and I do think this episode does it really nicely. Overall, I think I've said all that I need to say about this episode. This is definitely a step up from what I feel like this show has had to offer so far, and if this is an indicator of what a bad episode is like from now on, then I could very easily see why people hold this series in such high esteem. And it would make me look much more forward to seeing future episodes, even though I know that not every episode of this series is as good as this one. I hope you guys liked this episode, and I hope you liked this video. If you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And if you did like this video, come back around this channel next weekend as I will talk about the last 2 episodes of the Legion of Superheroes cartoon. And then the weekend after that, I will be back to talk about more Batman the Animated Series. And you can always come back throughout the week to see what I'm up to in my videos where I'm not talking about cartoons on Saturdays. Until then, I will see you guys later. Have a great day.